nos vamos a ir a Londres. Con nosotros va a estar James Lay, que es el director global comercial de NASDAQ. Nos va a platicar un poco sobre las plataformas abiertas de administración de riesgo. Es la única plática en inglés, pero bueno, todos aquí son súper fluidos en el inglés, así es que les pedimos una disculpa si no va a haber traducción simultánea. Realmente era la única plática que teníamos en inglés, y yo le quiero agradecer a James, que ahorita nos vamos a conectar a ver cómo nos va, para que nos platique de plataformas abiertas. James, you're there.
Hello, Jaime, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, James, you're okay. Go ahead.
You can hear me. Okay, great. I will share my slides then, and then hopefully okay. Can everyone see the screen? Okay, great, perfect. All right. So yeah, as Jaime said, my name's James Lay, and I work for NASDAQ. NASDAQ is a partner of ERN in the natural catastrophe modeling space, and I wanted to talk today about our experience with kind of open source modeling platforms, open data platforms, and give you some of our experience of how powerful those platforms can be. So that's the kind of topic of my talk effectively. So I'm going to talk about the power of open data, how we can use those standards in practice, what we consider the impact to the risk management process, and then just give you a kind of overview of how NASDAQ have contributed to the insurance industry. So firstly then, why do we even need open standards, I think is a good question. And this is my view. So it really is the key to ensuring transparency and interoperability between different data within different platforms. It avoids proprietary lock-in. So it means you're not kind of stuck with one data platform that you can't use that data in other systems. And it also opens up the collaboration angle as well. So I've kind of summarized that with many can contribute, not just a few. And I think those are the kind of three core examples of why we would need, or why we do need, open standards. So I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. So for those of you that are aware of the Oasis loss modeling framework, it's effectively an open source code set for catastrophe modeling. So it allows companies to develop models in a consistent format, and it enables companies that want to use those models to consume them within this open source format. So it doesn't cost anything to use the Oasis code. You can go to GitHub, you can download the code, and you can play with it in your own system. So I think that's a really good example of kind of open source and open standards. And if you look on the right hand side of my slide there, you can see what that means in terms of an ecosystem of catastrophe modeling companies. So there's 12 or so vendors that have developed their models in the Oasis format. ERN, our host today, we've been working with for a couple of years, and have models in the Oasis format as well. So that was great, but what we realized a few years back is that actually Oasis needed its own, not only its own model format, but a format for the exposure data itself. So how do you get data effectively and efficiently into Oasis models? So we realized that was something that was needed, and we kicked off a project in collaboration with the insurance industry and Oasis in order to develop an open exposure data format. And it was originally based on AIR's seed format. There were two reasons for that, really. One, firstly, was we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. It seemed like a lot of the hard work around things like construction and occupancy codes had already been developed by AIR, so we didn't need to do that. And secondly, seed itself is an open format. So when we approached AIR to ask if they were happy for us to use that format, then they were absolutely fine with that. Now we kind of realized that not the world probably didn't need yet another exposure data format, but it was a kind of key component to using Oasis models in a production type environment. And we also considered that the industry as a whole would benefit from a completely open exposure format that they could take and use and deploy, however. You don't have to have Oasis models to use the open exposure data format. So we kind of thought, do you know what, it's a good thing, no matter whether people use these models or not. It'll give everybody who writes kind of property cat the ability to create a exposure database without having to build it themselves. So we did that. We launched it in 2018, and then we decided to give it to Oasis to manage. It didn't kind of make sense for NASDAQ as a commercial provider to own it. It felt like that was kind of defeating the object a little bit of having an open source exposure standard. So we gave it to Oasis to curate. Makes much more sense for a not-for-profit company to do that. And it's now, pleased to say, widely adopted. So it's adopted by lots of different model vendors and model developers, as you can see in the chart on the right. It's also, all of the major brokers have adopted the OED format. Insurers and reinsurers as well are starting to kind of gravitate around that format. And there's now Oasis have also since launched a results data format, so an open results data format called the ORD, which is also completely open and free to use. So there's a kind of real world example of how you can take something that started off as a few lines of code and has developed into something that's kind of becoming more and more widely adopted across the catastrophe modeling landscape. So I wanted to take the opportunity today to kind of talk about how these open standards are used in practice. So I think I've tried to kind of represent that visually, because I think sometimes that's just easier to work with. So over on the left hand side, you've got your users, and those users could be catastrophe model users, or they could be model development users. The access layer could be a front end, or it could be using APIs. So the opportunity to either work directly through API automation, or to kind of get your hands on a user interface. And then because of the Oasis format, you've got this opportunity then to, you could, if you're a model developer, you can develop your model in that format. If you're a company that kind of wants your own in-house developed model, or you feel like you have some additional expertise, there are tools to be able to create Oasis models. And if you're a commercial model vendor, then obviously you can use those same tools. And what you get as a user is the ability to access this wide range of kind of model technologies from this broad ecosystem of different vendors that have their own specialties. It could be very, very good local knowledge, or particularly good science in one particular peril, and you have a way to actually consume those models. And not only that, but because the Oasis loss modeling framework offers a standardized financial calculation engine, you have the ability then to run models using the same methodology. So when you get results from any of these models, then you're going to get the same format in terms of the output. You can run all of the different perspectives that you would expect, ground up or gross, or even kind of net of reinsurance view across average annual loss, event loss tables, year loss tables. So all of those standard cat modeling outputs, all calculated using the same methodology, and then easy to consume from a user perspective, either in a via a user interface, or directly into some downstream data store where you might manage those results or apply some other post-processing tasks. So I think this just demonstrates that in practice you've got this massively powerful tool that can really unify the catastrophe modeling industry around a single standard. As a user, I showed those 12 companies that are developing models. Do you really want to deploy 12 different platforms in your own IT systems? I would suggest not. So actually being able to do it once and access models from all of those companies is hugely powerful. And then if we just extend that concept a little to how that can impact the actual risk management process itself, I think this lends itself very nicely to the kind of API usage that we've already touched on. So as a user, or as a business that writes property catastrophe risk, what is the most efficient way of interfacing with models? And generally the answer, as we kind of move through this decade, I think is going to be API access, API automation. So here's a kind of example of how that workflow could look. So over here on the left, we have our data store. Just highlighted the fact that we're using the OED format within that data store. And then you've got various different teams. So you've got the users, you've got your modeling automation system, and potentially your model development team as well. And then all of those teams, all of those use cases have access via API. So it could be a user initiated run, it could be no user intervention whatsoever, or it could be a development team looking to deploy a model, or update a model, however it may be. All of that functionality available via API. So you pull your data from your data store using an API, then you call the model which is in the execution engine, in this case, I've highlighted NASDAQ's own platform. All of these models, as I've said, are in the Oasis format, and then you can use the API to push the results into whatever system you might be using. Could be some sort of underwriting platform or reinsurance layer calculation, engine, that kind of stuff, and ultimately also store the results. So there you go, all driven by API. And I think in terms of what's the main impact on risk management of this? Well, in my mind, it's about using the people with expertise for the right jobs. What I feel like we don't need is a whole bunch of catastrophe modeling, exposure management resources that are effectively converting data or moving data from this platform to this platform. I've got to download something, I've got to log into another system, I've got to upload it there, I've got to check that the data is still in the right format. Am I still getting the results that I'm expecting? That seems to me like a huge kind of drain on sort of the expertise of the catastrophe management, exposure management team. So where I kind of see the real impact of these types of tools is you can get those guys actually focused on the job at hand, which is managing risk, not managing data. So just going back to the kind of NASDAQ contribution as far as the insurance industry over the last 8 years. So I just wanted to kind of highlight this because I think again this kind of emphasizes the point that back in 2014 we started with an open source code set from Oasis that really only did one thing, which was enable you to run a model. It didn't actually provide any models, it just provided the framework on which they could run. So we were asked to get involved in a project that was being run by Lloyd's called the Oasis Solutions Project. And throughout kind of 2015 and into 2016, we worked with 26 Lloyd's managing agents to kind of prove that you could use Oasis to actually run a commercial model. And back then it was there was only 1 or 2 models actually in Oasis format. So once we'd kind of proved that it could be done, we went live with our platform in 2017, which is not that long ago, really, if you kind of think about the evolution of the cat modeling industry. And then over the course of the next year or so, we started bringing more model vendors into our platform. As I said, in 2018, we collaborated with the industry to create the OED format. And then we were acquired by NASDAQ in 2019. So that was quite a big deal for us. It basically meant that using NASDAQ development resources, we could kind of redevelop the platform. We relaunched it on the cloud, so it's now cloud native on AWS. We started working with companies like ERN, with some much kind of bigger, more granular models than maybe Oasis had been able to cater for before. And by 2021, we had 12 different vendors representing over 300 country risk perils. And we were starting to see even some climate conditioned models being launched as well. And I think as we go through 2022, we'll kind of see more of that. And importantly, NASDAQ was chosen by Oasis to help develop the Oasis Enterprise platform. So actually our development team that worked with us in 2020 to repurpose the product has worked with Oasis to deliver what will be the new iteration of the Oasis platform. So we'll be pleased to kind of introduce that as we go throughout the rest of 2022. So quick summary then. So open data standards are the key to transparency and interoperability. I think that is a really key point. It avoids proprietary lock-in, which reduces complexity and cost, and it means that many can contribute to development. So, you know, as you've sort of seen already from the slides I've shared, you've got commercial companies like us, you've got not-for-profit companies like Oasis, there's academic institutions. Everyone can collaborate around these open data standards without, you know, any kind of legal connotations or licensing issues. So it's hugely powerful if it's done in the right way. And I think Oasis is an example of something that's been done in the right way. And, you know, modeling platforms that are open are hugely powerful tools for the industry. You know, I think when we first started this journey back in 2014, you know, did we foresee a time where we'd have 12 vendors working with us with over 300 country perils and the ability to deploy, you know, commercial models, in-house developed models, you know, all on the same platform. I think it, yeah, where it's got to in such a relatively short time is absolutely amazing. So that's it from me. I hope you found that interesting, and do let me know if you have any questions.
James, now you hear me, isn't it?
Yes,
sorry
if we
just switch back and forward here in the microphones. Any questions? We have around 5 minutes, 7 minutes to some questions. I don't know, someone in the audience or connected in Zoom has some questions? Hold on a sec, James.
Yeah, no worries.
Hi, James. This is Mario.
Hello, Mario. How are you?
Yeah, fine. Thank you. No, perhaps a question. Do you think that in practice, the operation of Oasis has made some impact in diversifying the offer of models and breaking the duopoly that modeling for insurance industry has suffered so far? Do you think it has had an impact on that?
Yeah, I do. I think it's been hugely important, Mario, because of the mainly the technical challenges that insurers and reinsurers face. Is, you know, how do I utilize these great tools and great models from all these different companies, you know, without having to deploy lots and lots of platforms into my organization. So I think Oasis, yeah, that platform actually means you can do that. You know, you only have to deploy one system, or don't deploy it at all. Let someone like us manage it for you. So I think, you know, maybe as time goes on, we'll see more and more adoption of these types of modeling technologies, because, you know, undoubtedly companies like yourselves, you know, you have an expertise within your region that can't be replicated by you know, other vendors that don't have that same level of experience. So I think it's really important that the industry can leverage technology in that way, and this helps kind of break down some of those barriers, I think.
Thank you very much, James. We miss you in Bermuda.
Yeah, next time.
Well, I think we can finish the conversation here. Of course, if there's any other questions, we can send it to James. James, thank you very much. Hoping weather in London is getting better.
It's raining here,
Yeah,
Jaime, but that's
So
not
that's
unusual, right?
Thank you very much, James, and hope to see you soon.
Yeah, good luck for the rest of the day. Hope it goes well.
Thanks a lot. Bueno, cambiamos a español. En un minuto, y quizá hubiera sido bueno arrancar la plática. Como ustedes saben, en ERN hemos hecho un esfuerzo por también participar en estándares abiertos a nivel mundial. Lo que nos acaba de platicar James es uno de los grandes esfuerzos que llevamos varios años haciendo de la mano con Oasis para poder tener plataformas abiertas en donde los aseguradores y los reaseguradores puedan en una sola plataforma correr diversos modelos sin tener que estar cambiando uno y otro.